How did a trained scholar of ancient Hebrew literature and a Dead Sea Scrolls specialist get involved with research on ancient aliens? Answer: I found myself dragged into it, kicking and screaming. There is in fact a veritable library of ancient Jewish literature, books systematically banned from the biblical canon, whose main focus involves supernatural entities, angels, demons, and yes, Satan. Let's have a look. Let's face it, the ancient Israelite prophet Ezekiel was hardly alone in relating accounts of interdimensional phenomena and supernatural, non-terrestrial beings sandwiched among the pages of the Bible. Bear in mind that if someone living in the pre-technological age were to witness what we might call non-terrestrial beings, or extraterrestrial craft of some kind, or a bright light in the sky, it would certainly be described in religious terms, either as God or an angel, perhaps, as the case may have been, a troop of angels. What if an extraterrestrial craft were to land and an alien being or beings were to make contact with our species? Again, the account would undoubtedly relate the event as some kind of angelic visitation. Furthermore, anyone having such an experience would undoubtedly have been vested with great notoriety, and as far as the ancients are concerned, huge credibility. To be sure, the appearance of angels is not uncommon in the texts of the Hebrew Bible. Are angels and ETs the same thing? That's a more complicated question. We can, in any case, summarize the appearance of these otherworldly beings fairly succinctly. In Genesis 2, cherubim are placed at the entrance of the Garden of Eden to guard its approach. An angel is said to stay Abraham's hand as he is about to slay his cherished son, Isaac. An angel is said to have found Abraham's handmaiden, Hagar, after she had fled into the wilderness, and again after she and her son Ishmael had been cast out. Ishmael is prophesied to become the father of a great nation, and a well of springing water is provided for their sustenance. Abraham is also visited in his tent by 3 strangers who turned out to be God and 2 angels. 2 angels are said to visit Abraham's nephew Lot at Sodom, only to be accosted by a mob of men to seek to have their way with them sexually. The angels smite the men with blindness and pronounce the destruction of the city with fire and brimstone. Later, the patriarch Jacob has a dream in which he sees a ladder ascending to heaven and the angels of God ascending and descending. Following the great exodus from Egypt, when Moses receives the 10 Commandments, an angel is dispatched to lead the way before him. Exodus 25:10-22. During Israel's long sojourn in the wilderness, an archangel appears to the Canaanite soothsayer Balaam, who in turn is en route to curse the nation of Israel. Standing in a narrow pass, the angel is invisible to Balaam, but very much apparent to the soothsayer's donkey, who lurches against the canyon wall, refusing to go further. When Balaam strikes the animal in anger, the donkey opens his mouth and miraculously speaks, rebuking the soothsayer. Balaam's eyes are then opened, and he at last beholds the angel, who instructs him to go ahead on his journey, but speak only as he is enabled. In the end, the soothsayer utters a blessing over Israel rather than a curse. When Joshua is about to attack the city of Jericho, we are told that he encounters an angelic being with sword in hand, who identifies himself as the commander of God's army, standing in alliance with the Israelites for their ultimate victory. During the period of the Israelite judges, an angel is dispatched to Samson's mother, announcing the birth of the one destined to become a powerful man of valor. The angel declares, "Do not ask my name, it is a high mystery." Thereafter, when Israel has been leaderless for a long time, an angel appears to another great judge who will deliver the people from foreign rule, Gideon. After the deliverer's victory, the angel returns, stretching out his rod and consuming Gideon's offering, laid out on the rock. During the period of the Israelite monarchy, we again see angelic intervention, as the prophet Elijah, fleeing for his life from the wicked Queen Jezebel, is touched by an angel who offers him a cake of meal and a flask of water. Most notably, at the end of his life, he is taken up into the heavens in a chariot of fire. Researchers of UFO phenomena have likened this to contemporary experiences of alien abduction. But these examples notwithstanding, tales of angelic visitation become far more personal, far more intimate during the centuries to come, the age of the prophets. Perhaps the greatest of all the biblical prophets was Isaiah of Jerusalem, who lived in the 8th century BCE and who vocalized more than anyone else the vision of ethical monotheism. His messianic prophecies in particular rank him in a class by himself among all the literary giants of the world. The prophet famously recounts a vision of divine reality as he beholds God sitting on a throne, flanked by 6 winged seraphim, literally burning ones, who fly aloft, chanting in unison, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." Another portion of Isaiah's prophecy, however, appears to stand alone. It is referred to as the Little Apocalypse, chapters 24 to 27, so named because it deals with themes relating to violent, earth-shaking cataclysm accompanying the end of the world. To many, it seems to mesh well with the New Testament's book of Revelation that heralds a time of travail and suffering, a great tribulation, followed by a new heaven and a new earth. But there's a problem here. What is all of this doing in the middle of a series of prophetic oracles that deal with great ethical issues, the real heart of the book of Isaiah, all of which are in the present tense, not some future age? Scholars have reasoned that the Little Apocalypse must have been written by some later prophet in the name of Isaiah and subsequently edited into the earlier and original text. But which later prophet produced this passage? The theory is that it was one of the so-called visionaries, a member of a marginalized priestly group who rose in opposition to the ruling priestly class. It makes perfect sense that in such an environment, people would be drawn to visions of the world beyond and to hope centered on the end of days. It makes sense that the visionaries would cultivate the disciplines of meditation and metaphysics, and that not a few of them would enter altered states of consciousness and become perfect subjects for, in Jacques Vallée's terminology, multidimensional visitation. We should not be surprised then to find a remarkable verse tucked away in the Little Apocalypse that is in turn nestled in the larger prophecy of Isaiah. We read,
"In that day God will punish the host of heaven in heaven and the kings of the earth on earth. They shall be gathered in a dungeon as captives are gathered, and shall be locked up in a prison. But after many days they shall be remembered. Then the moon shall be ashamed, and the sun shall be abashed. For the God of hosts will reign on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem."
Who are the host of the high place, and why are they on high? The common interpretation of this passage, and many others like it, referencing spiritual supernatural beings, is that the prophet is speaking of angels. And who exactly are angels? Traditional religion tells us that they are intermediary entities between God and humanity. They are messengers of God in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic tradition, and they are akin to wide varieties of spiritual beings in other religions as well. But what most people don't realize is that for strict monotheism, any focus on angels is a real problem. After all, how many gods do we have? If there is only one, it means that there is no other divine supernatural power in the universe, only God. The ancient Israelites in particular were troubled by the idea of supernatural entities out there in the cosmos, in addition to their one and only deity. What to do then about various references to angels in the Bible, such as the prophet Isaiah? The best they could do was to pay lip service to the angels while diminishing any emphasis on them. "Come in peace, angels of peace, angels of the Most High," goes the Hebrew liturgy, to this day, melodiously chanted in Jewish communities to welcome the Sabbath. But little else is said in Judaism about the role of angels, nor is there any developed angelology. The next question we should ask is, are biblical angels really angels? Returning to Isaiah's little apocalypse, we should note that the text here speaks of the host. The actual Hebrew term is tzava, which we may best translate as army. It's merely the choice of the translator to call them a host, a religious-sounding word that conjures up notions of angels. But the word angel is never used, and the language here implies judgment. Clearly, this is a malevolent force, not to be confused with God's army. This is hardly what we expect to hear regarding the angels, who are messengers of God, not evil entities. Often in the Hebrew Bible, the term host of heaven references pagan deities, worshipped by Israel's neighbors, and hence deserving divine wrath.
And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved, and the heavens shall be rolled together as a scroll. They have burned incense unto all the host of heaven.
And those who worship the host of heaven upon the housetops.
But for many readers of the Holy Text, this is where all the speculation begins regarding disobedient rebel angels who are led astray by their malevolent chief, Satan. Nevertheless, all of this is read into the text via sheer conjecture. The Hebrew goes on to say that they are of the high place, in the heights. An army in the high place? It sounds as though the prophet, whether Isaiah or one of the later visionaries, is acknowledging something. We have been visited. Unfortunately, trained scholars never go beyond examining the stylistic and literary aspects of the text. They theorize boldly about the group they call the visionaries, but never question what exactly they might have witnessed or experienced. Did they have some kind of extrasensory encounter with non-terrestrial beings? Did they feel overwhelmed by entities who came from the high place? Did they conclude that this amounts to an alien army deserving judgment from God? What about the reference to the kings of the earth? Let's recall that in those days, after the return from Babylonian captivity, the Israelites had no king, for they had no independence of their own. They were merely a colony, first under the Persians, then the Egyptians, then the Syrians, and finally the Romans. They did, however, have their priests, who often acted as de facto kings over the Judean colonizers. These priests presided over a rebuilt temple and led the religious life of the people, but that doesn't mean they were always in tune with the people they ruled. They have in fact been described as hierocrats, orchestrating a new and sometimes tyrannical hierocracy, i.e., a rule by the priesthood. This was the group with which the visionaries were in constant tension. And when writing in the name of Isaiah, it is quite possible that the kings of the earth is code language for the Israelite priesthood, who are worthy of divine judgment in the mind of our author. This in turn brings into focus the threat posed by the visionaries to the religious hierocracy, who, according to the theory, attempted to suppress those whose apocalyptic visions might unsettle the otherwise compliant masses. To be sure, visions and visionaries have always posed a threat to those in power, and even today there is ample talk of the systematic suppression by governmental bureaucrats of testimony relating to encounters with non-terrestrial entities, i.e., UFOs. It's time to dig even deeper into who these visionaries were and how they managed to cultivate their own brand of extrasensory perception. Make no mistake, the hierocrats in Jerusalem, who were responsible for rebuilding what would come to be called the Second Temple, were not to be out-visioned by the visionaries. They began cultivating extrasensory experiences in their own right, certainly aware of the weight of authority that such phenomena would grant them in the eyes of the people. Were such visions, from whichever camp they originated, genuine spiritual phenomena? Were they clever fabrications, as most contemporary biblical scholars would argue? Or should we class them as ancient recollections of genuine interdimensional encounters with otherworldly, non-terrestrial beings? Let's have a close look at a vision recorded by one of the Bible's minor prophets, Zechariah, who appears himself to have been one of the hierocrats. We read,
A vision appeared to me in the night, of one who was mounted on a sorrel horse. The angel that inspired me promised he would show me the meaning of it. These have gone out on the Lord's errand, patrolling the earth. And to him now, the angel of the myrtle wood. Those others made their report. All earth we have patrolled, said they, and everywhere is safety, everywhere is rest. Ah, Lord of hosts, my angel monitor said, wilt thou never relent, never take pity upon Jerusalem? The Lord answered him, I am for Jerusalem again, bringing pardon with me. When next I looked up, I saw a man there that carried a measuring line, so I asked him whither he was bound. For Jerusalem, he said, to measure the length and breadth of it. And at that my angel monitor would have gone out on an errand, but here was a second angel came out to meet him. Speed thee, said he, on thy way, and tell people of thine. So full Jerusalem shall be, of men and cattle both. Wall it shall have none hedge in it. I myself, the Lord says, will be a wall of fire around it, and in the midst of it, the brightness of my presence.
Some call this vivid description a purely religious experience. Others find broad commonality between this and the long legacy of contact phenomena that persist in the UFO sightings of modern times. That said, let's consider some of the individual elements of Zechariah's account. We have an altered state that's described as a vision. There's a non-terrestrial interdimensional being referred to as an angel. There's a means of propulsion, a sorrel horse in this case, and we are told that this being is surveying the entire planet. There are other beings as well who make a report, having been on patrol of the earth. We don't know much about the author of this oracle. He's known in tradition as Zechariah, and given his interest in the temple, he was most likely a priest himself, and one of the hierocrats ruling over the city. We can only wonder what kind of spiritual and meditative exercise this ancient priest and his compatriots cultivated in order to put them in touch with otherworldly beings. We can also imagine that the visionaries, who were united in their opposition to the priestly hierarchy that dominated the temple of those days, must have cultivated their own extrasensory phenomena. In their view, those currently in charge of the temple, the hierocrats, have been corrupted by power. The visionaries, by contrast, are steadily wooing the people to themselves. As disenfranchised priests, what could be even more compelling than a vision of a man on a sorrel horse? Answer: a messianic king, and a humble one at that, riding on a donkey. The theory is that the visionaries were responsible for one of the most famous passages of the entire biblical text. Scholars theorize that it was added to the book of Zechariah at a later date by priestly editors.
Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king comes to you. He is righteous and victorious, meek and riding on a donkey, even on a colt, the son of a donkey.
As for the sorrel horse of the first chapter of Zechariah, the section produced by the hierocrat author, this oracle, the product of the visionaries, declares,
And I will cut off the chariot from Ephraim and the horse from Jerusalem.
It was in a manner of speaking a means of declaring, our vision trumps yours. The messianic language continues,
He shall speak peace to the nations, and his dominion shall be from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth.
Is this prophecy purely religious, or is it one more example of an interdimensional phenomenon couched by the prophet in spiritual terms? Question: if an ancient visionary were to have an extrasensory experience with a non-terrestrial being, would he not cast this experience messianically? Bottom line, We've only begun to scratch the surface of what ancient Israelite prophets, sages, and seers dutifully recorded as they began to speak more and more of a future messianic age.
There's so much more to come.